Hi, I'm a higher ed social media manager and I have a confession. I am not an expert in promoting podcasts on social media, but Erin Fields, the marketing director at Ologie, is, and she's about to drop some serious podcast knowledge on us. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager. I'm Li Fowler, award-winning social media professional, author, and podcast host, and a recognized voice across the social media marketing industry. Social media managers are navigating the wild, ever-changing world of higher ed communications, and I'm here to share the real stories and lessons behind the posts. Each episode explores the challenges, strategies, and untold moments that come with running social media accounts in today's digital landscape. Let's get into it. Erin, welcome to, what should we say, the front side of the podcast.
I know it is a little bit weird. For those of you who don't know, I used to work for Enrollify, so I was on the back side of things, but now I'm on the front. So.
Yeah. So, and I'm so happy to have you here. But before we dive into the topic, how's life after Enrollify? What have you been doing?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Jenny. I've been a long-time listener of the show, as you know, as a social media manager myself. So for me to hop on the mic on the show is quite the honor. But life after Enrollify is so great. I keep in contact with so many people that are still at the network and so many of the hosts. And I'm at Ologie now. And so I lead a lot of the content marketing and the thought leadership behind the agency. And so it's just been a really great transition and I'm loving my job and it's just a lot of fun. So it's been great.
I'm so happy that Enrollify brought us together, and I'm so happy that you're doing well. So that's great news. So for this episode, can you talk about podcasting and how it continues to grow in popularity? It's not going away anytime soon.
Oh no, definitely not going away. I think podcasting is growing because it delivers something that I feel like audiences are struggling to really get right now, which is depth that still fits into a busy life. So people are dealing with content overload. They're dealing with constant platform changes, a lot of, same message, different way of saying it across social media. How can you best repurpose this and that and everything in between? And audio is kind of one of those last places where it can actually hold attention without asking someone to stare at a screen, right? The best way I describe it is like hands busy, brain engaged content. And so that's why podcasting fits so cleanly into real life, is because, commutes, workouts, errands, lunch breaks, dog walks. And when someone chooses to spend 20 or 40 minutes with your voice, that's really huge in marketing, to have that uninterrupted relationship building time with the audience member. And so in marketing terms, I think it really accelerates awareness. And from there, awareness builds trust, and trust is the thing that kind of quietly makes every other channel convert better. And so I think what's changed with that is that this isn't really niche behavior anymore. It's really mainstream. And I was reading before our interview, Jenny, that Riverside's 2025 podcast report came out, and it said that 73% of Americans have watched or listened to a podcast at least once, which is up from 67% in 2024. That matters for marketers because it means that you're not selling people on this format anymore. You're competing for a spot now in an existing rotation of content that's more popular than it's ever been before.
That's an interesting data point, because a lot of video content, you have to assume that people are looking at it or consuming that content with the audio off. Mm-hmm. But there's this whole podcasting is an audio first content form.
Yeah,
right?
and you're right.
So different.
Yeah, and that's kind of another point I was thinking about when you sent this question over, that podcasting has kind of quietly become multi-format. A big portion of podcast growth right now is really podcast distribution growth, especially when it comes to platforms like YouTube. Edison Research has been tracking this shift and notes that a large share of Americans have both listened and watched the same podcast episodes if they're in both formats, with YouTube being a major platform for weekly podcast listening and watching both. So the funnel now, I think, with social specifically is kind of like see a clip on social or YouTube, watch a segment, and then become a listener. And that makes podcasting feel bigger because it's showing up in more places where discoverability actually happens in 2026.
Okay, so that's a big portion of why I wanted to have you on the show is the promotion of it. But before we get into the details of that, can you tell us like why it's important to even have a podcast strategy, and what does that mean? Like, what does strategy look like for a podcast?
I think podcast strategy matters because podcasts take real effort, and without direction, just like anything else that doesn't have a strategy, they can turn into a whole lot of output with unclear results. And so strategy, I think we tend to overcomplicate strategy a lot. It's really at the core, it's a few decisions that act like guardrails, things like who's the show for, what is the show meant to do for a brand or a business, what is the point of view that it's building, what should the listener do next, those kinds of questions. And this matters even more because attention is fragmented and the options are endless with how much content is now out there. I mean, you think about, especially with authentic content, like anybody can technically be a content creator nowadays. And without those guardrails of a strategy, topics get really scattered, guests get chosen randomly, promotion becomes really hard because it's not clear then what the reason is for someone to listen from episode to episode. And so most podcasts, I would say, don't drift and fall off when people start one because the team is sloppy or the execution is sloppy. It's because there's too many stakeholders that want the show to serve too many audiences or too many purposes.
I love that.
Strategy is like that one way of how you protect the show from becoming everything to everyone and therefore memorable to nobody at that point.
Yeah, I love how you said that they sort of act as guardrails, and I think that's 100% right because it helps give you focus.
Exactly.
Right? It actually helps you understand who the podcast is for.
Right. I mean, is the goal to build authority in a category? Is it to nurture leads so prospects feel warmed up before they ever talk to your sales department? Is it to create a content engine, which I know we're going to talk about in a little bit, that feeds social and email? Is it to build community? There's all these questions that you should be asking yourself. You shouldn't just be like, I'm going to start a podcast because everybody else is starting a podcast. Absolutely not.
Or you shouldn't start a podcast because so-and-so faculty member wants a podcast, so we're just doing the podcast. Or
Right. And each one of those goals really, at the end of the day, changes what episodes should look like, what success should be measured by when it comes to the podcast. And I mean, it also means creating a clear show promise, a consistent outcome that the listener can count on each episode. And I think because a large share of the listeners are tuning in regularly, the good shows out there feel really dependable. So, a repeatable episode outline, a length of range that fits real listening windows based on your audience, a cadence that can actually be sustained. Strategy is operational clarity. It tells the team really what to say yes to, what to say no to, and how to keep momentum with your show without burning out.
Yes to all of that. So here's the thing. I find that in higher ed, people think posting the podcast on a social channel is the goal, and that's enough. But I'm trying to communicate that that's just the start, right? Just having the product is the start, and podcasting really takes a lot of promotion and marketing. But I think a lot of higher ed communicators are not marketers or promoters. What does that look like at a very foundational level for people who don't know what that is?
I completely agree with you that posting is just the starting line. I think there's a lot of times where as marketers, we get to the starting line and we think the starting line is the finish line. The marketing job is simple to say, but I think harder to execute well. It's make the episode easy to find, easy to understand, and easy to start. And that begins with how you package an episode of a podcast. And so The way that I view it is that I really put promotion into three different buckets. It's directories, shares, and surfaces. So directories are Apple, Spotify, YouTube. You're optimizing for search and encouraging these subscriptions there because that's what helps with in-app visibility and show visibility where it's being distributed.
How are you optimizing for each individual directory?
It's very similar to SEO, where you're doing things like, how am I titling the episode? How am I writing the show notes of an episode? Things like that don't go out the window just because it's a different format. It works very similar to how you would just write SEO for something like a web page or like a YouTube video per se.
So you're not cutting and pasting like in Spotify and Apple, and you're targeting or making it specific for the directory that it's in?
You might make it specific for specific listening platforms, but for something like if you're going to have a video first format of it, it should definitely probably be a little bit different based on the habits of how people are searching for on YouTube.
Okay. That makes total sense. So if it's like an audio platform, or whether it's a podcast, but it's like a video, like on YouTube, you would write it a little bit differently.
Right.
Can you give us some clues as to how you might do that?
I use a few different in-app softwares. There's one that I use specifically for YouTube called TubeBuddy, and it gives you guidance on what keywords are hitting, what keywords people are searching for. And I use that as a starting point. But I think one very underrated strategy that people don't usually think about is simply using the search bar in the platform itself. From there, start to type those kind of general keywords in there, and it'll pop up like you can use what people have commonly searched for right in there. It's right in everybody's hands, and people don't think to do that.
We do that in Instagram. Why wouldn't we do that in YouTube?
Right? Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a great tip. Okay, so what are some other things that you do to promote and market a podcast when you don't have a budget? I mean, a lot of higher ed doesn't have a budget. So how do you do this?
I think it looks like, to start, a simple runway. Like when you're going back to the strategy part, it's before launch, you tease the problem that the episode solves. During launch week that the episode's coming out, you share maybe 2 or 3 different angles, maybe a pain point, maybe a framework, a myth bust, depending on the quality of your show, what you're talking about in your show, the purpose of your show, all pointing to that same outcome. And then you resurface that once or twice over the next couple weeks because discovery is delayed, right? The goal isn't to kind of shout like new episode on social every time that you're dropping. It's to give your ideal listener multiple chances to bump into a very clear reason to hit play on your podcast.
And I love that you're saying that. You're not just saying, oh, new episode. What is the problem that you're helping to solve? What is the pain point that you're helping your audience get through? What is the myth? I love those.
On the flip side, where promotion usually breaks down inside a team is well promoted, in air quotes, stays really fuzzy. And so then it becomes nobody's job. And so this is why I'm so big in my job, in my position, on defining ownership and defining what done actually means. Not in terms of we posted once, but like a real finish line of, the episode page is optimized with a searchable title and show notes. The guest has a simple share kit. You've shipped a handful of clips and you've got like one takeaway post. It's gone out to your email list. You have the CTA at the end of the episode so people know where to go after they listen. So I feel like a lot of the legalities of how to promote it is, when done, is very specific. Promotion feels more repeatable than instead of like something random that you're doing. And you really stop relying on luck for discovery of your podcast when you have a repeatable playbook that you're doing for each episode.
I think that is absolutely right. I think the lack of ownership, or, so many teams are just focused on producing the podcast that they don't think of who should own the promotion or the marketing of it. How important is a website for a podcast? Because I think I'm finding that a lot of higher ed groups, they push a podcast out on YouTube or whatever directory, whatever platform, but then there's no homepage for it where you can actually just subscribe for the podcast itself.
Right.
Is that important?
So my question to that is, how do you know who your listeners are? to an extent, like how detailed are the analytics on the back end? To a more technical point, if you have a page for your podcast, you're seeing who's entering with the right tracking on it. Of course, you're able to see,
Because you're asking for that kind of information, like, right?
right.
Like,
Well,
what's your email?
even if your website has proper tracking on it, if they've visited your website before, you can see like, okay, how many times have they visited this page? How many times have they visited this episode page or this landing page? And so you're getting all that information where then maybe you can do some more targeted outreach based on, if you've got Sally Sue who's visited the web page about an enrollment episode and she's visited maybe like 5 times to listen to that episode, hey, maybe that's a signal that Sally Sue is interested in enrollment content.
So it answers that question, like, how do you know who's listening? Because you don't get that in analytics from like, the Apple iTunes.
From my standpoint, I never saw that information. I could see like high level kind of things, of
Right.
like how
It
many
doesn't get that
downloads the show.
specific.
But
Yeah.
it's like other platforms. It really doesn't get that specific.
Oh, that's a good insight. I mean, so you would recommend it. Like what, why not have a web? I guess that goes into resources because then you have to.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got the resources to do it, I think that is definitely a move, especially if you're able to track it correctly. Now, obviously, if you're a team of like 2 people and you've got to do X, Y, Z, you got to think about where to best spend, your time and your resources.
If you want to do podcasts or your podcast like really seriously, that's the important step to take, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think so.
I think another area where a lot of people haven't really tapped into the full potential of podcasting is like the content engine that it is. Can you help break that down for us and what that means exactly?
A podcast is a great content engine because it gives you a very steady supply, if done right and with a good strategy, high-level material that you can translate into so many other formats without constantly inventing new ideas. I mean, not using the same clip in 20 different areas, but I mean, it becomes your source of messaging, your frameworks, your examples, your FAQs, your rebuttals, your thought leadership. And it's especially valuable, I feel like, because podcast listeners seem to be very high intent from reports that I've read. So a meaningful portion in that Riverside report that I looked at identify very much as early adopters, which means more often than not, when someone's listening to a podcast, you're speaking to the kind of audience that likes to try things, that likes to share what works, that likes to influence others. And so the way to make it an engine is to create a very clear workflow and repurpose by asset type, not by random clipping. And so one episode can reliably create a short clip that names the pain at the top of the funnel. There can be a social carousel that teaches the framework that's in the middle. And then maybe a short post that answers objection at the bottom and a written recap that maybe, that goes on that episode page for search and
I
SEO.
got you. So it's not like they're all clips or snippets.
Right. No, let's break that baby down. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you're like, there are maybe facts or steps that you can pull out and create graphics and make it like a carousel. Okay. Okay. This is like coming into form.
Yeah. And then so then like over time, all of those pieces stack upon each other and someone discovers you through a clip, but then they validate that information through the carousel and then they convert through a resource maybe tied to the episode. And so from a leadership perspective, that's the business case, right? At that point, it's more than the show. You're producing a message bank and a distribution system that makes the rest of your content calendar look more consistent and more aligned. I mean, if we want to truly talk about at the same time, like how to save time and how to be more efficient, I think most times we just need to go back to the basics of these things and follow our strategy and our thought out workflows.
I mean, like, assuming that you have a strategy.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly.
But also, you just made me realize that all of those are different touch points too.
Yes.
So you're reaffirming your content or you're reaffirming your status as a thought leader or your brand, right? As a leader in whatever space that is.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Wow. That's okay. You're getting me thinking about podcasting in a whole new light too. It's not just me getting to like learn from interesting people, but like just from a content source and a content engine at that.
Absolutely.
So what are the biggest mistakes people make when promoting a podcast, Erin?
I would say that one of the biggest mistakes is assuming that the episode is the product and the promotion is the optional add-on.
Let's let that breathe for a moment.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, say that one more time.
Yes.
Yeah.
We assume that the episode is the product and the promotion of that episode is the optional add-on.
But that's incorrect.
Yes, that is incorrect. Yes.
So what do you advise is the proper way to think about it?
So, I mean, the product is the listening habit, right? If someone listens once and they don't come back, you didn't really earn a subscriber. You earned a one-time click. So a mistake that I see is constantly not building for retention. Episodes start slow. The hook doesn't tell people why they should stay and listen to the show. There's no clear expectations set at the top about what someone's going to learn. Even like a simple line like, by the end of this episode, and this is just like a thought that came to my mind. By the end of this episode, you're going to have like a 3-step plan and a checklist to go through to solve XYZ problem. That can dramatically change how long people stand around for an episode if they know that they're getting some kind of value from the content.
Because people who listen to episodes or podcasts in their entirety, they're bought in. Like these are fans, right? So you're actually trying to build a loyal fan base in community. You're not just trying to put out like a half an hour of audio content. Is that sort of what?
Right. And I think like, not to be like a kiss up, I guess, but I think your show does that very well, Jenny, where it's like every time that I come to the show, I know like I'm hearing someone's perspective on something that they've actually done or they're in the weeds. And as a social media manager myself, I know that I'm getting valuable content. I need to do my job better.
Oh, Erin, thank you. I'm glad that's what I'm hoping to get across and to unpack a very specific topic, right, per episode. Okay, so if that's a mistake we're making, what is like maybe low-hanging fruit or something easy that we could be doing more of when it comes to promoting podcasts?
I think for me is like thinking about low-hanging fruit is simply being consistent with what you're doing and how you're doing it. So things like, you know, when you have an episode and you have a certain playbook and you're like, okay, we're going to do, 2 clips for this episode. We're going to do a social infographic. Maybe we're going to do a carousel. Having like a consistent line of thought behind each episode, I think is very helpful, not only for your audience to know what to expect, but also to keep yourself on track and accountable as well. I think a lot of times inconsistency with podcasts breaks trust. If the cadence is random or the format changes every week, listeners don't know really what they're subscribing to. And so when listeners have endless options, I feel like, in my opinion, the really successful shows are dependable. That means like staying consistent on the release day, having a recognizable structure, having a clear sense of what an episode sounds like, those kinds of things, and really grabbing and holding on to that, of not feeling like you need to shift every time something new happens. Like staying consistent, I think, is more valuable in today's time for social media managers than it's maybe ever has been when things are changing so rapidly.
Okay, what I'm hearing from you is consistency is really vital and creates trust. And so if your posting schedule is all over the place, you're not promoting it in a very systematic, regular way,
right,
you're actually breaking trust.
Yeah, I think so, in my opinion. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is a really insightful piece of information. You're trying to build relationships with your listeners, and when you don't know them, like that's how you do it with podcast. Is that consistency?
That like sort of ties into another thought I just had, that I think like another mistake that people might have about podcast is measurement of mistakes. And so people tend to really obsess over download numbers and ignore some other indicators that actually could give some signal growth. So things like, are your listeners finishing your episodes? How long are they listening to your episodes? Are they subscribing? Are they coming back next week? Are they clicking links in the show notes? Like Are they joining your mailing list? Like all these different things that tell you whether you're just building momentum or you're just publishing episodes in the void. And internally, I think those kinds of metrics help you protect the show because they can point to real audience behavior instead of, these different influxes of high-low downloads, month and month and month.
That is great advice because I do think that we have a way too much dependency on like downloads. And another thing that I find is like sometimes if you post a podcast on a social media platform, people are adding views. They're looking at views and downloads, and those are not the same thing. Are they? Like, I feel like that's not apples to apples measurement.
Correct. Not that download numbers are bad because that's telling you your show is being discovered in some sense, but these deeper level metrics that are actually telling you like, hey, these signals of like, my audience really likes this topic, or maybe they don't like this one. Maybe I should take my content a little bit more this way because this is what my audience likes, or, like those different kinds of signals that really should help shape a podcast's content strategy.
So have a focus, be consistent, and don't just get too enamored with the downloads because you can learn from other metrics as well. Does that kind of?
Oh yeah, you summed it up great. You might have said it better than me. Yeah.
Oh, stop! No, that's not true. Erin, any more bits of wisdom or advice? Any advice that you can give me? Like
podcasting is so fun, and I love it, and it will always be like a special spot in my heart. But as it continues to grow into what it is today, and it continues to grow popularity, just don't forget that it is another lever that deserves proper strategy, and not just its own strategy, but how it fits into other strategies as well, like social. So just don't go too fast down the highway with it. Make sure that you're aligned on why you're making it and the purpose that it serves.
Just because you record something, it doesn't mean it's a podcast,
Right.
Okay. Erin, you know that the last question I ask all of my guests is, what is your confession? And please share your confession with us.
I think that my confession is that, I don't know, someone can hot take me here, I guess, is that a lot of video podcasts end up just being long videos with microphones.
Just like we just said, like, just because you record a piece of audio, it doesn't mean it's
Correct.
a podcast.
Right.
Just like so you're saying just because you talk on a video does not make it a podcast, is what you're saying.
I mean, like when you hit record on video, I mean, you're not just competing with other podcasts. At that point, you're competing with YouTube. And I mean, YouTube is pretty ruthless in the most neutral way possible. If you're not watchable, people are going to leave. And
I love that.
The platform reads that as not satisfying. So all in all, if you're going to do video, you have to commit to making it watchable, just not recordable.
You need focus, right?
Yep.
And you have to make it good. Erin, thank you for sharing your insights, for coming on and talking with me. We miss you. And so thanks for taking the time.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jenny. It was a blast.
Thanks for listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. So be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.